Hi, everyone. This is Joe Sanchez. I'm on the board of Grapevine Colleyville SAGE, which stands for Supporting and Advocating for Gifted Education. That's exactly what we do. We are here to support parents and students, primarily within Grapevine Colleyville, but really in the broader GT community as well, so that we can have the most effective educational outcomes for students who learn differently in different gifted ways. And so I'm super excited to welcome you all here today for this next installment of Your Future, Your Path. And Your Future, Your Path is all about having conversations with people who found the right career fit. And today we have with us Keith Thode, who is the CEO and Chief Scientist of AdvanceNet Labs. He's a personal friend of mine. He's an absolute genius. He's super creative. And I can tell you that he loves students himself. And so I think you guys are going to really get to know Keith through this presentation, but I'm just really excited that we could bring him here today. And the intent is to be able to answer all of your questions also as we go along. So Keith, without further ado, and so I don't make your head any bigger, I'm going to just hand things over to you to get us started.
Great. Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Kimberly. And thank you for those of you who already put in some questions. The questions are great, and it actually really helped me change a little bit what I was going to even have prepare, because understanding where some of the questions were coming from. So I appreciate folks doing that. You can advance the slide, I guess, and if folks can see that.
Oh, this one builds, huh?
That's first, right off the bat, we're going to do that. Oh, and let me see. And it's a little small. Let me, I'm going to
Want me to just build it out for you?
No, here we go. I just want to make it so I can see
Okay.
better. So yeah, so today we're going to talk a little bit about my favorite topic. I'm just kidding. About me. To understand what I'm about, then you can do the next one. And then my education journey, to kind of give you a pathway. Then my professional journey. So you'll have different context there. My current main organization that I'm involved with, that I lead, AdvanceNet. And then we're going to have a rap break, and Joe,
Are you kidding?
Sanchez is going to go lay out some beats for us. So thanks, Joe.
And I think I'm seeing why you didn't send me this in advance.
Exactly. After the rap break, then we'll have some Q&A and maybe some final thoughts. So that's a bit of my plan for today. So thanks for that. A little bit about me. It's I am certainly a very blessed person. A lot of this talk will be about some of the things that I have and things that I've done and what have you, but it stands on the shoulders of a lot of other people investing in me, in my faith. A little bit about me: I am a Christian. I try to be that first and foremost, but as we go through life, I'm a husband to Amanda. And a father to 2 kids. We're going to hear a little more of them in a second. Uncle Keith, and a few other things. So I try to come at things from being a steward and a leader. I feel like that's part of how I've been made, is to provide leadership in a lot of the forums that I'm in, but through a kind of a lens of stewardship. I work primarily in what we call the tech for good space. I try to do some thought leadership and try to help change the way people think, maybe. And when, especially when I'm around people maybe who are a lot like me by look and feel and social status, but maybe, can we look at things maybe a different way and help use everybody's gifts to improve society. I'm an entrepreneur, startup guy. I never would have called myself that originally. But that's a bit about me. I love to volunteer as well. When we're not in 2020 or 2021, I love to travel, and you'll hear about my travels and such. And a few other things here. I am the least triathlete looking triathlete on the out on the course you'll see out there, but a lot of my theme is sort of a service through stewardship. So, and one of my favorite guideposts is a part of the Bible. If you're from a Jewish or Christian background, you would know this one: what is required to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So that's a bit about me and like a lot of my comments and what at least I try to have drive me on my better days. So
All right.
um, a little bit about my path. I grew up in a loving home. My parents are no longer with me, but they certainly did their best and gave me lots of opportunity. I grew up outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and then finished high school in a rural community in upstate New York for high school. So not certainly not certainly a valuable experience in other ways, but not the educational experience that you all have. For those of you that are in the Grapevine Colleyville ISD in particular, you just have a wonderful opportunity where you go to school um, that aren't afforded to many kids and young people. After that, for undergraduate, I went to Vanderbilt. And we'll talk more about this because from your questions, I realized more detail was probably helpful. And then in the working world, we'll talk about a little bit my path there, but from consulting to in the software space. And my family is extremely important to me, as well as my faith and trying to serve, outside life being more than just work. Picture of my family there. Some of you may know the fellow all the way on the left. That's Micah Thode. He graduated a couple of years ago. He was the president of Grapevine Debate and all around great guy. He is at Tufts University in Medford, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, studying international relations, quantitative economics, and Arabic. So if you have questions about that, I've gotten to gain a lot of knowledge about that. My amazing wife Amanda with our dog Oreo, and then that I have Kedzie with me. Kedzie is my running dog. She runs with me at great long distances and always wants more. And some of you may know on the right is Teddy, my sophomore at Grapevine High School, and so if you get to see her, you can or see them, you get to say, "Hey, I saw your dad," and you have to tell Teddy, "Your dad was so funny." Very important.
All right. Oh, did I miss part of your slide here?
Oh, that's all right. It just builds out. Oh, so a couple of different things. So we'll talk about. So these two pictures on the left, we'll talk a little bit about my career path. I started my career in consulting, and we'll talk a bit more about that. And traveled around the U.S. and then eventually around the world, consulting other businesses. And when you work for a high-profile consulting firm, sometimes you get to stay in places like this. So this hotel is now the Meridian. When I stayed in it, it was the Ritz-Carlton in Seoul, and I got to live at the Ritz-Carlton for several months. Very fancy. Later in my life, I was doing more relief work, and there was a bad earthquake in Haiti. Some of you may remember, and I was a first responder for that. And not quite the Ritz-Carlton. That tent there was my home for 2 weeks in the beginning when there was no place for us to stay other than in a tent on the ground. So
Wow.
different things you get to do, different kinds of adventures for different roles in life.
Quite a disparity there. All right.
Yes, absolutely. So, and again, I give you probably trying to give you a few different things to ask questions about, so we can have a longer, more opportunity for question and answer about different things there. But I know a lot of you had interests and questions about college and things like that. So I'm going to talk and career. So I'm going to do a little more detail on here. So I left upstate New York in high school to come to Nashville, Tennessee, to attend Vanderbilt University. Several of you have probably heard of that. And it's a great school in the city of Nashville. It's got a bit of a campus that's a little bit of a protected element inside a bigger city. So as you think about colleges, things like that, like different campus environment you like, we could talk about that. My undergraduate was in economics and in human and organization development. I was also very active in programs, and I would encourage that too, to be, for me, I was very active in the school paper and publishing and serving on the publishing board for the university's student publications, and really focused more on, while I participated on the editorial side, I was more focused on the business side, as we'll talk a little bit more about how I'm wired, but helping run things on the business side, which is a great opportunity. I later did shortly after I started some graduate work there, and still in that human resource development. Again, how do you develop and equip people? Uh, Later, uh, and then several years later, after some adventure around the globe, I ended up in North Texas, and in a different phase of life, married and with a young child, another one on the way. And so I pursued. I stayed a little closer to home, Texas A&M University, and I did a partially on campus, partially remote program in industrial distribution. And in there, I kind of shaped my master's to pursue my passion at the time, which was that humanitarian relief supply chain. So how do you saw those mattresses behind my tent back there? How do you get the movement of goods to people who need it? And while I was there, I was fortunate to get together with a group of a couple of other students and develop a paper that became a published article in a peer-reviewed journal. So when you start thinking about master's work and goals and things there, getting published, pursuing publication is an important thing depending on your career choices after your master's work. From a work perspective, I started off, I had a pretty clear vision early in my life, or, really around, your age or slightly older, but really that I wanted to earn enough while I learned enough to really be of service, to have some freedom later in my life, really closer to my age now, was my original plan, was to do more corporate work for longer, but then build a lot of valuable skills so that I could be of help to people. I was very fortunate that my father was a corporate person, an engineer, and executive. He worked for a company called Procter and Gamble. And if you have like Crest toothpaste or Tide washing detergent or Dawn dishwashing soap, that's Procter and Gamble. And so I got to learn about the lessons of the corporate sector and what it meant to have a job there and to work hard at it and to gain valuable skills. And so
Okay.
that was
Hey, how do you like it? Come over here.
that was
I
sort
want
of
to ask you a couple questions.
Was to work in that sector and then eventually go be of service to people. And then I was able to do that much earlier, it turned out, in life. I had the chance to move into the tech for good space. So I started working at a consulting firm called, it's now called Accenture, you may have heard of. The consulting is a very interesting way to gain a lot of knowledge and have a lot of interesting experiences as a young person. Or throughout life, but it's a great opportunity to learn, more there than you would learn in oftentimes than even in an MBA program or something, with the skills and experiences you get there. Then I did some other technology firm work, and then had the opportunity to then, it was not my idea. And again, another person's idea, that a company I worked at is, hey, we should use this corporate supply chain technology to help people. And, and that person had a great idea, but, they wanted to keep doing their corporate job. And then I took a chance and kind of left my corporate job to work at the corporate foundation, and then to help incubate that idea and then create a nonprofit that did technology for good, and hunger relief and disaster relief, like you saw the pictures there. And now we do work, my current venture, which we'll talk about more, in the education technology space, and more in the tech for good. So again, using a lot of those skills that I built working in the private sector, and then applying them to what would be the nonprofit sector or the social sector, like we like to talk about today. So the group I have now is called AdvanceNet Labs, and then AdvanceNet Technology Services. So it's a mix. We have a nonprofit, but then we have a for-profit, and that's part of our theory of change, is that for-profit entities have a lot of different ways to help to go alongside nonprofits. So we have That was a Czech startup. So that's one of the things you can ask me about. And now we've been in business for a while. We do mostly technology for underserved populations. So the same learning technology that Bank of America uses to train their employees, how do we let a program providing work skills to veterans returning from service, or a neighborhood work skills program suffering with poverty, or international youth education program, getting this valuable technology and using it to deliver their lessons globally. We do a lot of things like that. You can move on. That's fine. So some of our sample projects, this one right here is one you could actually participate in. That's with the International Youth Foundation. It's called Passport to Success, and it provides good working skills, business skills, some basic financial skills for young people all around the globe. And we support the organization that delivers that by supporting their technology and making it successful. And when students have problems, it's our people that answer those questions and get them solved. I think there's another, if you hit the build, and I apologize, Joe. Might be another, there we go. In a different space, that which just popped up is a mobile app that we use to help combat domestic violence. And it helps when someone's in crisis in a domestic violence situation and the shelters are full, or sometimes it's shelters aren't really equipped to handle teenage boys or men, and so what this app will do is help find donors to pay for a hotel room for that person in crisis. And then another thing we do with our education programs, the thing on the bottom, which some of you might be interested in, is we do virtual conferences and virtual events, especially in this time of COVID where we can't all gather together. How can you have virtual events? We do this a lot for underserved groups. So we do that. We have a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we do a lot of conferences for folks like the National Conference of Black Political Scientists, or the Conference of Minority Public Administrators, and different groups like that. But another group we do one for is SETI, the SETI Institute. So if you don't know SETI, and some of you probably do, some of you are probably fans, SETI is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute. So we are in a couple of weeks here, we're hosting their big annual gala, and Bill Nye the Science Guy will be there, and Adam Savage will be one of the hosts, and all of that using our virtual platform to have their event.
Wow.
Yeah, one of the nice things about that is, we used to say that we have people who use our technology on 5 different continents, but with the SETI Awards, we'll have users all over the universe we won't even know about. So, and you can advance again.
Okay.
Thank you. And that one, the last one on the right, is for returning vets. That's with a large charity called the Easter Seals, and they're helping people who've served in the military and that are now coming into the workforce. How do we help really get them ready to be successful in the corporate sector, or in other kind of non-military jobs, and help them honor their service and help them have a successful transition. This is another project we work with called Work Ready Mobile. This helps vulnerable students. So most of the target is not most of the folks here on this call, but you think about a slightly older student, or these days with all the dropout we've had with COVID and such, that younger people who didn't get complete their graduation. How do you help them get what's called a GED, or a high school equivalency diploma? How do you help them get a work certificate? How do you help get them overcome those barriers they've had and get them into a real profession, their first real professional job? And so it's folks who really have a harder row to hoe than most of us on this call. It helps them stick with their program. It helps them get the gains that they need and the skills gains that they need so they can get some quality employment. And we built that app from the ground up. So so we'll do, so that's a bit about our company and like what the end products are. And I thought I would share a little bit about, when you're leading an organization, a couple of the things that are important outside of the technology, right? So you think about a tech, you think, oh, I code, I built some code and there's some tech and that's it. And there's so much more. One of the things is to cast a bold vision. So here's the vision every quarter. We're about to have our quarterly meeting at AdvanceNet next week. And we go over this vision and our values every quarter, trying to help the team have a good, solid team that understands what we're about and where we're going. So these are aspirational. This is our AdvanceNet vision, or it's on, we will be a successful social venture. And I think, I think we're getting there on that one. We have a goal of not long from now impacting over 1 million people a year. Right now, over 200,000 people a year are touched by the systems and solutions that we deliver. And so we need to keep going to get to that million, in that education and empowerment space. We are, organizationally, we have a great group of folks who, and so therefore people who are in the helping people world want to work with my team because they are such special folks with talent and committed to the space. But now we're building these products like that Work Ready mobile product where people, get it and they use it and they don't even know us, and they don't know us that well. And that's where we want to get. That's how we really get to impact so many more people. And then we're trying to inspire other people. We feel like we've got a different way of looking at the world, that we can really unleash more of the power of people who have a business mindset, but also want to help people, and want to use those skills to help people. Like I feel like I was called to do. How do we go and share that vision with others and get other people to do, take their own path, but with some of these same ideas. Our values, our organizational values, we try to be very brave and take on the hard challenges. I'll talk about this a couple of times with the people that are on the call. Like most of the people on this call, you probably get a couple more A's than you do B's or C's, like a lot of people on this call, right? So failure it doesn't feel very good. We have a lot of high performing people in our organization too, but we try to take on hard challenges, which means there's some risk and there may be some hard work. We try to have wisdom and kind of chart a path for folks. It's one thing to think good ideas and have these crazy thoughts and all of that, but then also doing the real hard work of getting it done, of showing the path of how do we make lives better for people, but then also building the path and getting the work done, even when there's obstacles. And you can drain through a couple more of these, but it's all about working together. It's all about working together and sticking with it, even when times are hard, especially when you're doing technology change. A lot of times people only see the end product. They don't see all the hard work that goes through to make change happen. And me as an employer, as a person who leads a company, I really care about my people as well. And so the people who work for me, I want to provide them a meaningful work, and which is very easy with the kind of work that we do, but also a pathway for each of them to grow. We've talked a bit about my faith. My company is not a ministry in the sense of it's not a church or anything like that, but we want to create a space for people to understand, why are we here, or to think about for themselves, why are we here, and to and the blessings that we have and the motivation to serve. And then I work on ways that I don't just own the enterprise, but other people have ownership in what we're doing, and so they feel like that they have their agency and their chance to actually own something that's meaningful. So when you think about like a software company, and what do you do all day? It's just you must sit there and code your brains out, code all day long, and isn't that the job? Not really. I mean, as an organization, we spend a lot of our time doing these other things, like crafting our vision, setting goals, setting up the path to achieving those goals, leading others to come with us on that journey. And then we've got to go sell, right? We've got to get people to buy in and use the products that we've designed to help people and to give us understand, where are the needs where are people having pain points? Where can we build technology and other solutions to help people? And then how do we raise money to get other people investors to come be a part of what we've built? We spend a lot of time educating other people in the community on our approach and some of the things that we've learned over time, but also being really very much in listen mode. And how do we learn? How do we learn from everything from everybody from people who live in a very different part of town, people who live south of 30 in Dallas, right, who have a very different lived experience than I do. How do we learn from young people, right? How do we learn from you guys? What are the ideas? What are you thinking about? How are you approaching problems? So it's both educating and learning. A lot of you may think, or some of you may think, well, technology isn't really for me. Like I don't like to code and all of that, but I'm more of a creative, right? Or I'm more of a designer type person. Well, design is extremely important in whatever work is being done, whatever solution is being developed. Designing it so it's easy to use, that it's people want to use it, that people find it intuitive, that it actually designed in a way that it performs well. All that creative process is extremely important in the technology space. And when it takes a diverse set of team members to make a technology organization work, and we have artists just like we have programmers, all kind of coming together to build solutions to help people. Product management. This is a really neat role in a software organization. If you think, well, I get technology bit, I like technology, and I'm a little creative, and I'm really kind of business minded. I'm really business minded too. Well, product manager is a neat role. It's how do I actually manage like that work ready mobile technology and really bring it to market and make it financially successful as well as impactful, and make sure it rolls every day. It runs well every day. And you can probably just drain through some of these other things so folks don't get too bored. But you can see the different ideas and different things that we do every day. And code and build is part of it. And also part of it's running a business. So if you think, oh, I'm going to have a technology organization, it's still very much a business, right? You still have people. I always joke that, the people that work with me, they want to get paid what I told them I was going to pay them, pretty much when I told them I was going to pay them, it's and things like that. You're right. So you very much need to run, think about the business side of things in any organization, whether that's you think, oh, I want to work at I want to lead a nonprofit organization. Right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. You still have to have finances. You still want to care for your own staff. You still want to make your organization sustainable to, continue on and continue to do more and serve more, whether it's a for-profit business or a church or a nonprofit group. So that's most of my kind of set remarks. I have some other comments, at the end maybe, but I thought maybe this would be the chance to leave plenty of time for y'all to ask me about anything. Living in different places, I've lived in, the Boston area, upstate New York, Nashville, Tennessee. I lived in Seoul, Korea, Atlanta, Hong Kong before the handover, Chicago, and then here in dear old Grapevine, Texas. So any of that. Careers, you can see some of the different roles I've had and folks that I've worked with, whether it's like to do a tech firm and a startup or to be a consultant. What's that life like? What about finance and operations, or what is it like to be a CEO? Different things like that. Ask me about high school or college choices and my thoughts on that, nonprofits and ministry work, or anything else from what you've heard over the last 25 minutes or so. I'd love to answer your questions and just go from there.
Well, I'm going to get the questions started because I have a bunch that were collected from folks that are on or who will be watching this afterwards. And so one of the questions, and this kind of taps into what you were talking about earlier, it kind of puts you on the spot a little bit, but that's okay, because I think from your vantage point, you're talking with a lot of different people. The projects that you focus on reflect a genuine interest in serving diverse and underserved communities. So in your view, which professions have the clearest both challenges and opportunities in terms of addressing gender or racial disparity?
That's
like
a
for
great
students
question.
coming up, through the pipeline?
Yeah. Yeah. There's, I have to tell you, there's, part of showing you what we did as a company, like, is that there are so many different answers to that and different disciplines. Um, I had a slide and I actually took it out, that, talking about, you think about something like a legal person, like, well, what does that have to do with what does that have to do with helping people? Well, there's a lot that can do in that space, all the way down to foundational things like, a stable government. I mean, we're in sort of an interesting time here, but generally, the fact that we can have businesses and that businesses have predictability and your contracts are valid and things like business law is very important and shaping good government policy. Also helping, like I mentioned, that domestic violence app, people who suffer victim injustice. So the law has a lot of applicability. Um, the finance, the world of finance, is, in these folks that, um, in these areas of, trying to serve racial justice and protection. The legal piece, by the way, on the gender protection, is just so important. The but finance is so important. I mentioned sustainability just for all of these organizations. For them to be successful, these, you think about social workers, that people have these very discrete, passionate skills about working one-on-one with people. Well, we need, the finance people help create that engine and that sustainability to make that possible. um, so I think, there's some traditional routes, so there is, just to be clear, because I mean, for high school folks, there's a path, like, for example, to have, to pursue social work, a master's in social work, and to work on direct service if you feel like that's where you're called. But there are several of these other areas. And of course, I believe in tech being, one. Tech provides a lot of equity. I mentioned those virtual conferences, and working in the racial justice space, and the diversity and equity space. There used to be, to go to a conference, and those of us, like, we don't, I'll say, for me and a lot of people on this call, the idea, if there was a really important conference to us, we would save the money and we would pay for the plane ticket and we would go to the conference and pay for a hotel for a couple of days and come home. That access isn't available to everybody. So this idea of virtual conferences now lets a bunch of people participate that wouldn't. So there are just so many different careers and so many disciplines that have a way to impact. So if you had particular interests or questions, I'd be glad to point to you to specific examples, as well, how your passion might be aligned and your discipline might be aligned with helping people.
So let me take you back to high school now. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. How did you balance your personal interests and hobbies with your academics back when you were the age of some of the students that are watching this?
Yeah, yeah. That's a great question. There's the you know a lot of you, like, not just, I speak as somebody who has a grapevine high school parent, of two, pretty sharp cookies. You have a very intellectually demanding and workload demanding schedule. um, I think some of that, comes down to time management, and then you also need to have, um, and then when it comes to, and some of the clubs and things are important. Is it really important to do every single one? I would say that in following the college admission process the last, um, couple of years, doing everything isn't actually the most important thing. It's doing some things that have a connectedness and purpose. And it is important to have some time laid out for what is your passion as you kind of help discover yourself, right? I would say one thing, and learn about you so you make the wise choices about what's next for you. I would say one very practical thing with that is sometimes your area of, passion, you could just document that. And there's ways for you, I'll use the word market, to market that as part of your college application process. Um, right? There's some where you take it and you have an interest in, I know somebody has an interest in, 18th century fashion, right? Okay. Okay. And so they've done studying things. Well, they just document some of that and maybe post it on a blog, write a couple of articles, some of your thoughts that you just post it to your friends or post it wherever anyway, just clean it up a little bit and post it as a blog and then be able to talk to that. But definitely leave room to pursue your passions.
Great. And then for students who are either getting ready to go to college or even a recent graduate who might be feeling a lot of pressure to start out in a high paying job versus doing something more socially rewarding, which is maybe what they actually would be more interested in personally. What kind of advice do you have? Because you yourself said that you started out in consulting and your strategy was to try to rack up a number of years of saving and all that to be able to branch out and take some risks. But for someone who might be wanting to start out more on that path, what are some thoughts you have or some cautions?
Yeah, that's good. So the first thing I would say is that um, the work in the direct service, I love what I get to do. I really do. But that work in direct service is not always as glamorous as it seems. It is definitely rewarding, right? And so I think when you haven't had a career yet, sometimes that can be a little bit disheartening when you get started. Uh, the I do think there is value for a lot of folks in going out and gaining some valuable skills that you can then leverage up after a short period of time to go do a couple of years with a consulting firm or at in another good kind of a quality learning experience, work experience where you're going to gain some skills. But on the so I would consider that seriously, as that was of course the path that I took. But also, I think some of the other things you need to think about is um, making sure you very much have a plan for living within your means and beneath your means in a place where those first jobs might not provide, as much financial help there, because that freedom will help you later. That's another thing about those corporate jobs. If you live like you're a social worker while you're a higher paid consultant, then all of a sudden you have a little bit of money, which is a little bit of flexibility and freedom. The other thing I would say is if you're going to go straight into that direct service, is to really have a path and a plan for how you are going to continue to educate yourself in a more formal way. We're always still learning, and I'm still now having to constantly in the tech world, we're constantly having to reinvent how we work and do ourselves. But if you're going to go into that space in particular, and if you do your research, if you're going to be in that direct service work, a lot of times your graduate work, you can find ways for you not to have to pay for that graduate work if you position yourself appropriately and are part of certain programs. So I would say try to really make sure you've got a clear plan if you're going to go into that direct service first about how you're going to be financially sustainable and how you're going to continue to educate yourself. And to understand that that those things provide freedom, and really it's a like you put money into a savings account for it to grow for later, so later you've got more money, right? You've got more capacity to serve if you kind of do those very disciplined things in the beginning, even if you go directly into that direct service, so that you can serve even greater and be even happier kind of with your whole life later.
And then what would you say are some of the most rewarding aspects that for you personally of working in the social entrepreneurial space?
So I have got a first, I guess the first thing, I guess more than personally satisfying, is how much I've grown, um, how much I've, how much more I'm sensitive to, um, and we talk about our maker, how much more I feel like I'm, at least for me, that my ego has been kind of moved out of this, been put in check about how much where I am isn't all about me. And the idea of my friend talks about this thing called winning the zip code lottery. and like you all have gotten to go to a tremendous, those of you that are GCISD, you get to go to tremendous, just a really amazing school system. Even though you may not feel like it all the time, it's to really for that. So that's a personal thing. Generally for my work, it's those, I get the most out of the personal connections. I love data, so the data showing the impact we had, the food systems we have, like
Mhm.
that really motivates me. The fact that over the time of this call, over 1 million pounds of food is going to flow over systems that I built, that I was part of a team to build
Wow.
15 years ago. I mean, I love that. I feel like, but then working with those leaders, for me, it's working with those other leaders and helping them be able to serve more people.
Cool. So let me ask you, because you've mentioned the consulting a few times,
Mhm.
I don't want to assume that everyone even knows what you're talking about when you say you worked in consulting. Can you just in like a minute elevator speech explain what you mean?
Great. Yes. So generally in consulting, and there's different kinds of consulting, but generally you work, I'll say as a young person, when you first come out, you'll work for a firm, for a company whose job it is to go help other companies operate better. And so, and sometimes that's fixing something that's going on right now that's broken, right? Like maybe they're spending too much money, um, uh, you know, paying for their safety equipment, right, or something, or maybe they're just doing something new, like, hey, it's a company um, that makes toothpaste, and now they're going to go ahead and make mouthwash. Like they want to look into that, right, as a new venture. So you'll be hired to help in that thing, that time. So consultants tend to come in times of change. So you'll come in, like for example, for me, um, one assignment I had was I was working for a consulting firm, and I helped Delta Airlines change the way it ran its finances and work with other people. So for one example, it was a billing system. So how it kind of charged the other airlines it worked with, and I helped make a new process for that to happen better. And so you'll have assignments like different things like that. I did another project I helped scope out was to help, speaking of airlines, I helped people work together better in like the pilot, the engineer, and the
Mhm.
flight attendants. And so they did a better job with safety. So I taught some exercises on to help them communicate better. So again, we helped create that experience, and then the company kept running it, and I went off to the next thing.
So what are the kinds of majors that consulting firms like? Like what
That's a
do they
good
hire from?
That's a good question. So consulting firms. Um, so I'll say again, speaking about this kind of, hey, I go to college and then I come out and I get a job in consulting. There are for folks who do business consulting. I'll stick with that to start. They like economics, they like engineering degrees, anything that shows like a real critical thinking piece.
Mm.
Um, and then usually if you show some initiative in your activities, some sort of leadership, some sort of starting something new, something like that. Finance is a good one. So things that have especially because as young people, you tend to do more quantitative analysis
Mhm.
in the early parts of consulting. So things that can show a proclivity there.
What would be your encouragement for any students who perhaps shy away from quantitative and STEM kind of space, but maybe they think they'd like to be you one day and run a social venture?
Mm.
What's your encouragement to them?
Yes. So I would say that, just because you study some things and just because you kind of learn them as a discipline, that doesn't mean that has to be your role, certainly forever. Um, when you talk about, I had an interest in, my main passion was serving people, right? But I still I acquired a human and organization development degree, but I also acquired an economics major. So I spent the time to have that discipline. It's just a core tool set. Um, and so if you're, I think it's very helpful to have that understanding that's not all who you are or who you're going to be.
Mhm.
Um, and if you look at today, like the main things I do is I goal set, I meet with people, I encourage them, I help them understand their plans, I help them achieve their goals, and I help other people maybe understand how we can help them achieve their goals. So now, like, I don't do much analysis at all. I don't do much analysis at all. I do, or much of the data, the detailed data math. I do a little bit for some pricing and things, but really, I'm like kind of the chief encourager and motivator.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah.
So what about what would be some subjects or classes that you would suggest someone take regardless of major to develop the critical thinking skills that you're talking about that employers find attractive?
Mhm. Yeah. So I think basic economics class, basic economics class, and even other things that have some applied math, and that'll help you. Like if you don't feel like you're a STEM person, but also helps drive some meaning into, um, why you take the math. So that could be a sociology. I have to tell you, as a high school person, I had not the best science experience, and then so I shied away from it at the end of my high school career, and then it took me shied away from science and math, and then I got to college and I fell in love by taking an economics class. I said, "Oh, this is really neat. Oh, now I really have to go learn a bunch of math that I should have learned already." So anything that shows that applied math. So they can be economics, it can be sociology classes that are math intensive. There are classes in philosophy and logic as well. So if you take those kind of core reasoning classes, those are all good ones to show. And taking a diversity of those just shows a well-roundedness.
All right. And similarly, we had a question from a student. Want to make sure I get their question right. If I'm interested in multiple tech sector fields,
Mhm.
computer science, cybersecurity, robotics, etc.,
Yeah.
how do I decide which to choose?
It's-
So this is kind of within tech. What
Mhm.
um, what would help someone to kind of narrow the field down and
So
bullseye?
one thing, yeah. So one thing I'll say in general is that um, is that where tech is today is not at all where it's going to be where you graduate. If you're somebody who, look, I'm going to finish high school and I have to work my way through college, I'm going to work my way through college, and I need to get a job in career now, and I'm going to have to kind of contribute some to the family. Then, then that's a different situation where you can pick a path. And I would say, picking like a cybersecurity is something where straight out of high school you can actually have um, the work. Um, that can help really kind of provide for your family and have some ability to move up over time. If you are somebody that's going to be able to go to a 4-year school and maybe be able to choose some opportunities, maybe do some work if you work way through school even, but where you've got some ability to go ahead and pursue a degree like that, um, then I would say that you really have to decide your passion, but understand that the tech landscape is going to work. Like if you're a Sage student and you're going to go to a 4-year school, um, and then decide whether you do graduate work or not after that, then I would almost wager you now the job that you're going to get hasn't even been invented yet. That's how fast the pace of tech is changing.
So true.
Yeah. So I just think you need to decide which things you're passionate about. Um, and that's what's going to serve you best anyway, because that's what's going to give you the energy and the motivation to kind of do the things that you need to do. Like we all work so hard in high school right now, right? But how do you kind of can continue to have that energy? I would say to worry about that more than and what are those root things that impassion you about technology? And is it the people side? Is it the solving the problem side? Is it the like I'm a bit of an architect. How do I put the right pieces together, to make some end game? That's a bit of what I do as the chief scientist. Understand that and kind of pursue learnings on that, and not be as tied. I would say that then one other point just in this space is that learning how to code and pursuing developing coding skills, and you probably already have some, the person that asked this question, that's great. But there's a conference that I participate in regularly, and 2 years ago, we were going over the highest growth jobs in the United States going forward, and and the ones that are most likely to go away. The one that was most likely to go away was computer programmer, right? Yeah. So I mean, there's just
Why
the
is
way.
that?
Yeah, so there's the way technology is evolving and the way the products are evolving. Now, still knowing how to code, knowing that architecture, knowing that process for how code is built and what can go wrong is great and important. But I wouldn't pursue the deepest set of coding skills at the expense of learning other things, particularly if there's other things that you're passionate about.
Gotcha. Thank you for that thorough answer on that. How do you discern when and I bet you have experience with this and you're welcome to choose your words wisely just with the circles you run in, but how do you determine whether a company or organization is genuinely socially driven or if they're just appearing to be because it helps from an image standpoint?
Yeah, so I mean, as a consumer, I think it's an ability to look at their programs. Are they really incorporating you know incorporating things like sustainability or diversity, inclusion, and things like that into their business practices versus just in their marketing? Is it just something that their foundation does versus um, is it senior members of their company? Is it pursuing strategies and things like that? I mean, if you're really passionate, if you're thinking about this as somewhere I'm going to go work, looking at where do they spend the money? Like if they're really committed, they say they're interested in diversity. What is the makeup of their staff? And then from a procurement standpoint, what is their ratio of procurement? Where they spend their money with minority and women-owned businesses or other diverse, owned businesses. So it's the activity that they actually do as their regular part of their business.
Okay. Then here's an open-ended question. I love this though. I'm entering high school next year. What classes should I plan to take if I want to have a career similar to yours? So go ahead. Give them a punch list that they can check off over the next.
Exactly. I would say, as much as possible going in. First of all, good on you coming into this call as an eighth grader. I would say that you're going to find out so much more about yourself over the next 4 years, really, and beyond. That I would say the most important thing is to stay open. I mean, to the extent that you can, take those AP classes. You'll find that as you look at the scoring and the nature of the work and such, sometimes the level below isn't really even that much less work. It's just different. It's more rote work, I will say, versus more higher level thinking work. So to take as many of those as you can, to understand how you're shaped, though, and to have some. And I know everybody's got parents, you've got to work through that, and all of that. But also, what are those eight? I mean, you're so lucky if you're a GCISD student. There's such a diverse set of those AP classes. I'll tell you, my son, who goes to a very top university, took art history and the art history seminar after that, like AP art history, and this, and it's so much shaped him as a person, and it's so valuable, right? And so he took the science and the chem and all that, but it wasn't like he didn't take the second physics class. He took another an art piece that's part of how he's wired. You'll have an AP psychology class and some other things. So, but to in general take a diverse set of those things, to keep your mind open. It took me going all the way to college to realize I had gotten turned off by a bad education experience in high school, like I said briefly, and I turned myself away from math and science, and then I had to work to catch up to that, and I realized, oh, I love this stuff, when I can see how it's used. So I would say try to take the higher level classes as much as you can, um, and but also to kind of have a diverse, what if there's something that you're passionate about that fits that, then pursue that. Don't necessarily feel like you have to take all of the science classes, or all just to at the sacrifice of something else you might be passionate about.
Cool. And here's a question that we got in, and here's an opportunity for you to make fans with some of the parents on the call. The question was, do I need good grades to get into a good college like Texas A&M? So do someone's mom a favor by answering this question accurately.
Yeah. So I'll, of course, your kids love it when you tell stories about them, right? But I think, my son would tell you this story of he was a very good student in high school. He was a very good student at GHS his first 2 years of school. But his sophomore year of college, we took him to visit some college campuses, and he visited a couple of these very top universities, and he found the one he really wanted to go to. And he realized his grades were very good, but they were not the very, very best. And he was, and that he hadn't really tried his hardest, right? And then he was really motivated to push himself, and his class rank went up significantly, and then things changed for him. So I would tell you that the grades are important. The um, and if I would, if you don't end up, I'll tell you, if you don't end up at your top choice for school, that does not, I mean, life can continue. But yeah, you need, if to the extent you can commit to the grades. The grades are important.
We drop Gabby off. Sorry. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask Justin if you could unmute yourself and turn your screen on. Take that act of bravery. Keith, Justin is a college student, and he will be graduating soon. I'm not exactly sure how soon, but he saw the blurb about your talk and got super excited because he's looking to do something similar. And so I really wanted to give him the opportunity just to ask you whatever he wants. Go ahead, Justin.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Yeah, Keith, I'm graduating in like 3 weeks, actually. And after that, I'll be starting a job in consulting. So I just wanted to ask, like, what advice do you have to someone who's just going and starting that career path?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations. So yeah, some very specific, I'll tell you some very specific things which will apply to other people. Actually, I had another slide on this, but I'll tell you that first of all, your network is extremely important. Like, if you haven't been building your network yet, you need to start doing that. My LinkedIn link is going to be at the end of this, and you're definitely feel free to connect with me. There's a tremendous opportunity that, back when that, Joe and I didn't have when we started with these things, to kind of to more effectively build your network now. So I would encourage you that you're going to meet some amazing people, both that your people that you work with, but also your clients and things like that. And that's a lot of several of my career opportunities were people who went and hired me back from 3 jobs ago, and they've moved on and I was back, and then I would encourage you to do the extra things. Again, I don't know all the else that's going on in your life right now, but if you've got the freedom to really apply yourself, it's a unique season to go ahead and do the extra things. Like I got recognized my first year out doing consulting. And part of why I got recognized by the firm was because a couple of things. Back when you used to always go in, I think they always saw I was in the Saturday sign-in log because I was there working. But also too, I did things like I helped create the kind of it's antiquated now. We used to have this thing called voicemail. And so we created like the voicemail radio show and some other things that I helped the consulting practice with that were over and above. And that really helped get me recognized, also helped me meet some other senior members of the firm. So that helps build that network. And then I guess the other thing is, to the extent you can, take the travel assignment. I mean, one of the best things, I mean, I got to see the globe, I mean, several places around the globe on the company's dime. I got to live in that Ritz-Carlton. Like, you might think, oh, I get tired of living in a hotel. I'd have to tell you, you never get tired of living in the Ritz-Carlton. So like, I mean, these are just these unique opportunities. And if they're there, if they seem dangerous, like, or you mean career dangerous or risky, or like this project, I don't know about this project or what have you, or it's going to be away from my friends. I mean, I would just tell you to do it. Like, take advantage of all the opportunities you've got. Go be brave. As much as you can in that role. And congrats, and definitely connect with me if you want outside of this on the LinkedIn, and glad to continue to help you in your career path and, in whatever comes your next level of, whatever's next after this and such.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Do you have any other questions? Just want to make sure.
I think that was the big one. So.
All right. Awesome. Keith, one question that I did want to ask you, in our advanced materials, we promised people that you would go into detail about design thinking and everything that goes into design thinking. So can you share with us a little bit about your passion for that and what it even is and what it entails and what kind of skill sets you want to build to do magical things with that?
Yeah. So part of my passion on this is the fact that the person who who has said to themselves, well, I'm not really interested in engineering, or I'm not interested in coding, and so, I'm not gonna. I only care, I care about people or things like that, or math isn't my thing, that there are roles for you in the creation of whether it's technology or cars or what's going to be next after cars, and things like that, or even social programs, right? Social service programs. All of this, comes up, in terms of creating something new or improving the function of a current thing. It's this idea of design thinking, of and there's a whole process, and we could, not to get too far into that, but there's a whole process you can have for how things are made and how you can bring a diverse set of people together with diverse talents and diverse skills to go and create something new. Whether it's a computer program, like I said, or anything else, or a new way to serve homeless people, right? There's just and again, we're stronger, and the science will prove this out, that the teams that do better in designing new things, the more diverse the team, the better the end result. And so, that to feel like, especially, this idea of like, I don't think I'm really into technology because I don't code. Well, the fact of the matter is everybody's into technology. CEO of a company, another CEO that I work with says, companies now have digital divisions, but pretty soon all companies are going to be digital companies, right? So it's all of this is extremely important in this creative process. And it just requires, wherever you think your route is, as long as you like to problem solve or bring creativity, there's a role for you in this. Then there's a whole you could learn to facilitate. How do you lead that process if you want to be a leader in that, and helping people kind of work together and come up with some concepts and values, and then prototype, let's come up with some sample ideas, and then how do you actually get that, once you get the sample idea, let's take a car, just because everybody knows what that is, and designing what the car would look like, design, understanding what, inside and out and its performance and all these elements of the car. And then how do you go, build a sample one, build a prototype, right? And that's a different set of skills of building that prototype. And then there's the phase, okay, well, now we've built one. Well, now how do we build 50,000 of them? That involves some different strengths of folks. Folks with different strengths to come lead that part of the charge. So in all of this, where we think maybe STEM's not for me, I'm not really into tech, or I'm not really into creation or engineering or some of these other things because of one reason or not, just realizing the value that you have to contribute to that process, that design thinking process, no matter what your background or passion is.
All right. And so then to put that into a case study in your world, one of the projects you mentioned to me that you're currently working on is you've been partnering with the city of Dallas on COVID vaccine distribution, reaching more underserved communities. So what's the composition of the team, and what are the roles on the team for a project such as that from start to finish within a social organization?
Sure. So that's a really interesting one because I would say that, as part of and we talked about like different people having leadership at different phases in that process. So a leader in that process from the beginning was from the government sector, a council member Casey Thomas, from Dallas. He's a politician, and his assistant Chris, going and recruiting a diverse set of stakeholders. From the community. So we've got everybody from in that team from, tech, relative techies like me and then my team, to people who, leaders with the Poor People's Campaign. If you don't know this, if there's Martin Luther King, it's the same organization from Martin Luther King's time, and evolved that work in some of these vulnerable neighborhoods and really know the people and their issues and how they relate with different messaging and things like that. And then people from the government, from the Department of Health, coming together and saying, look, here's where we're at, and here's where our challenges is, here's how many people we need at these times, and sort of that piece. And then several other folks, but I'll shortcut it to say then our strength of, hey, how do we design effective messaging based on listening to the folks from the Poor People's Campaign and from the folks from the politician who really understands people as well, right? How do we design something that looks effective and communicates clearly, but then how do we leverage technologies like Facebook and Instagram and the math that goes behind that, the algorithms and such, to get those messages in front of the right people in the right way at the right time, so that in a way that when they see it, it's clear to them to do the right next thing and click here, and then all of a sudden they're in there registering for their shot without it being 6 other things that they have to do. So in the beginning, it's the politicians and and the social workers and the people in the community, and then we design together with our creative people, and then it's our detailed analysts, and then it's our experts to execute. So it's different people all coming together at the right point in the chain.
Well, that's a great answer. Very detailed. Thank you. That's actually helped me to understand a little more what you do. So hopefully it's helped others. I have another question, only because I've known you for years, and I know that you, on the one hand, there's a part of Keith that's always on for the business stuff, but on the other hand, there's also the Keith who, in my opinion, is really effective in investing in his family. So how do you do that mythical thing called work-life balance?
That's great. I think that's a common term that is good because people understand it. I think the way it works out is a little bit more. I think of it more differently as prioritization, and and knowing when we have the seasons to really lean in, in one area or the other, versus saying every day at 5 o'clock I'm turning this off and I'm turning this on. But it's about understanding the priorities and when you need to commit to what, and to trying to take yourself out of being the center. It's how do I serve here, and when where do I most need to serve, right? um, um, right now, and taking the time to listen, and to like I was saying with and I'm going to forget the poor fellow's name already.
Justin.
Justin, thank you. Justin, I mean, Justin, I don't know all of Justin's story. When I was Justin's age, I had a season where I could really just very much invest in my work. Um, and then you do hit a certain, and then my graduate work, by the time I went to go do graduate work, um, like I said, I had to make I had other places and things I could do for graduate school, but I had to make a choice that allowed me to leave space so that I could really focus on my family as well as work. And honestly, that got to be a little too much. Like, there's a reason why I'm not Dr. Thode, and that's because, Mrs. Thode said the master's was enough, unless I, want to quit my job, to create that space. So
Mhm.
again, I think it's really about um, intentionally making sure you've got capacity, knowing what your priority is at the moment, and um, uh, I'll say a mistake I had made early in relationships before I was married, which was helpful for when I was married, is to um, not ask your family to uh, not have your family make sacrifices that they didn't agree to, right? This can happen in very much, and it can happen in like high powered professionals, but also can happen in people who are in social service or in ministry, where of course there's very good reasons to do more and serve more people outside the home. But if you've got to keep your core um, healthy and vibrant, and that's, um, I'll say most of the time that's your first call, or how I'm wired, like who I believe is calling me to work, and to live, um, to best, serve, as I'm called to.
Cool. Well, I think I may have exhausted all the questions that I have, but I'm totally cool at this point going open mic with anyone who wants to unmute themselves and just hurl a question at us.
Great. And if you flip to the next slide, it might prompt some
Oh,
other.
there's more slides. Okay,
Oh,
sorry.
there's just one thing around.
Boom, I've been holding out the good stuff. There you
No,
go.
no, there's some other things. I don't have to drain through all of that, but yeah, any questions that anybody would have, and here's some other things that might spark some discussion.
So when you're putting these foundational elements, is this questions you want people to ask themselves, or do you want them to ask you specifically what the superpower is? Just so we know what we have here.
Yeah, I think so. So some things to think about for our high school folks and our junior high becoming high school. Good for you again. Like, some things for people, like, we're all focused about school and work and blah blah blah, but there's some just foundational things for people to think about for themselves. What these things um, mean for themselves, kind of those first ones, and then there's some other the I don't want to take away from anybody having any questions, but I'm glad to talk through some of these things too.
Can you talk us through setbacks or opportunities so that it doesn't just sound like a great thing to put on a fortune cookie? What do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that happens, I'll say, I'm projecting a little bit on some of, the sage young people, and like people that I know that are grapevine that are sage like people, and how I was. So I'm projecting a little, but I understand everybody's their own individual. But um, in in our world, in my world, definitely for me, things go right more often than they go wrong. Especially when I was younger, things would go right, but much more often they went wrong. I got good grades. I got awards for that, like, all of that stuff that maybe you're going through in high school. And so then when things don't go your way, or in your plan, like maybe you don't get into your first choice college, right? Or you don't get that killer first job that you were planning on, or don't get picked for the promotion first. Um, that I've found those things to be um, uh, good for me in terms of a humility piece. Also, what do I have to learn about myself to be better? Um, and and to work on those things. I had early in my career, I'll tell you a mistake I made. Well, no, too long of a story. But the
Well, tell us the mistake. It's okay.
Sure. All right. Sorry. So I'm working at my first
Okay
big
to be human.
consulting firm. And one of my first evaluations, I get generally a good evaluation, right? But one of the remarks was that, but Keith sometimes, lacks attention to detail.
Mm.
Okay, whatever. Yeah. Okay, fine. I go and I move. So consulting, you go work at one company, for your company, you're working at some other company, and then you pull back and you go and work for a different company, with a different team and whatever. So I go off to my next assignment, and I work for a while, and I get my evaluation, and generally things are good. But Keith sometimes lacks attention to detail. I went,
Mm.
how random. That other guy's like, why would those two people both say that? Oh, I lack attention to detail. But it took two different people, like totally. Then I was like, oh yeah, you have something to learn, mister. So I think the other thing is that, understanding, like, I love the title of this, when it's your path, right? That there's not one best path,
Mhm.
and though there's probably one best path, there's a path for you. I think about, again, not to be too much about scripture and things like that, but a guiding thing for me is a part of the Bible where they, it talks about doing the good works that God has laid out in advance for you to do, and that there's a plan, and however you think about higher powers and things like that, that, maybe that's part of that wasn't your plan, but it's part of somebody's plan. And now that you're in this new place, what do I do from here?
Cool. And then what about, you have the word pride there in the last bullet, and I love that. Take a risk, especially when all that is at stake is your pride. So what are some examples of maybe along the way, other than the one where you got the feedback twice, but what are some examples from your career
Mm-hmm.
where you kind of had to get over yourself, so to speak, so that you could get to where you are today?
Mm-hmm.
Because it might help some of us who get stuck sometimes.
Yeah, and I would say that, and a little playing off a little bit of what I said before, like we're not used to, a lot of the folks on this call aren't used to getting a B, right? Or getting, that anything less than perfection. I'll say another challenge I had in terms of getting over myself was in starting AdvanceNet. So in starting that, there was I had there was, at the time we started that organization, I had already done well financially. I had a very supportive family. I had a place where I could start a new business and take some risk. And, if it all didn't work out, somebody would still give me a job later. I could go back and say, okay, I know I've got to go back and work for, another company, and I'm not really meant, I didn't succeed. So, but there was this, thing about, well, gosh, well, people will know if I failed, right?
Mhm.
And, I think, sometimes at work, there'll be a new project or a new project team or things like that. Um, so many of us on this call are so well supported like that. So many of you as students are so, you've got, folks at home that love you, that you have a place to, to pull back to. And it's really just, oh, what will my friends think? Or, and I started AdvanceNet when I was, 40 something years old, and I was like, what will my friends think? Come on. Like, you know, I should have, I probably should have started advancing a few years earlier, and like,
Mhm.
to put those things aside, that enemy of perfection, not letting you go ahead and take some risks and be okay with failure and having setbacks be opportunities and growing from there and things like that.
That's a really good encouragement for our GT community. I think perfectionism is pretty pervasive. And so
Yeah.
thank you just for your vulnerability, everything you've been sharing. I did want to give one last chance if there are any non-shy people. I'll just wait 20 or 30 seconds here. You can let us know. But this has been truly incredible and just really beneficial, and just your candor and the thoughtfulness in the way that you've answered questions. And because I know you pretty well, I've kind of got a little bit hardball with you there because I knew you could take it.
Yeah,
And you knew where it was coming from. And I appreciate that, because it's really allowed us to kind of, talking about that car earlier, we really got to look under the hood to get a little bit of a feel for what, what's really been built into where you are today, and a little bit of a really clear understanding of the path that you took. And just one of the things that really stuck out for me is when you were talking about the technology space, and that it's really more about skill building than worrying about getting too narrowly focused on anything, because most of what you can work on today will be irrelevant 5 years from now anyway.
that's right.
It's kind of like learning how to think, so to speak, is maybe the better strategic approach to career. That's one of the big things I took.
Mhm.
And so, oh, we have a question. Boom. All right, we have 2 questions that just came in. So look at that. What do you know now that you wish you had known when you were back in high school? So we're going to take you back,
Yeah.
time machine, to high school. What do you wish you would have known then?
I wish I would, just a very practical non-career thing. I wish I knew then what an impact you can have on people in little ways. Just by focusing on them. I have friends back from high school that I'm, back connected with or reconnected with. And again, I finished high school in a very small town that's sort of in an economically vulnerable place. So I'm doing some side things trying to help invest in the community being successful. So I'm connected back to old friends, and it's very interesting, both positive and negative, the ways you find out that you had impact on people, and that and just being really sensitive to that your words matter, and the time you spend with people matters. The I would say that from a school or from a school side, I would say that where just because you don't get into your first choice college, that doesn't mean that that's the end of your career. And that the world is going to be, you're going to learn so much more about the world and about yourself, between here and the time that you even finish undergraduate and college, for those of you that go. So not to get too upset or wrapped up about any one thing now.
Cool. That's awesome. All right. Well, unless if there's anything that you're really regretting that I didn't ask you, I would just like to thank you. This has been really an awesome time, and I think it's been really beneficial, and it's going to continue to be beneficial as we also just promote this to folks who weren't able to be here with us tonight. So thank you for just the way that you invest in so many communities, and taking the time to invest in our GT community here at GCISD. And that's kind of a wrap. Is there
Right.
anything else? Oh, that was my wrap. There you go.
There's your wrap.
You promised people that I'd be throwing down the rhymes, and in kind of I can say it in a sing-song tone of voice, and perhaps that would count, but I'm thinking sometimes it's just things are better off left where they are. So thank you. And you're
Well,
getting
thanks for
lots of
giving me the chance. I
chat
wish it
box.
could have been in person. And I look, and if you flip to the last slide, my contact info would be
Oh,
there.
there's another slide, y'all. I'm sleeping on the job.
No. Just for, if you wanted to get a hold of me, and Justin, definitely, there's my LinkedIn. I would encourage all of you, like your high schoolers, you go ahead and set up your LinkedIn profile and start doing that even. So you start building that connection, but definitely Justin, but I'm there if anybody wants to send me questions or anything. And just thank you for being so giving of your time and letting me get the chance to be in your lives for a moment.
All right. Well, thank you, Keith, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And that concludes this most awesome episode of Your Future, Your Path. I almost forgot the name. There you go. I'm just so excited about how well it went. There you go. And I'm going to stop the share there, and then I'm going to turn off the little recording-y thing. I'm a verbal processor, folks. So if you're going to be on a Zoom call with me,